Hidden musical genius. The waitress's piano performance left wealthy guests stunned. There is a restaurant in Manhattan where the tables cost more to sit at than most people earn in a day. The lighting is always soft. The wine list is thicker than some books. The staff moves quietly, like they have been trained to take up as little space as possible. And on most nights, that is exactly what they do. Her name was Mei Ling. She was 27 years old, and she had been working double shifts at this restaurant for almost 2 years. She carried plates with both hands, refilled glasses before they were empty, and answered every question with a small, polite smile. The kind of smile that says, "I am here to help you, not to be remembered." Most of the guests never looked at her face. Not really. They looked at the food she placed in front of them, or at their phones, or at each other. Mei Ling was used to this. She had learned a long time ago that being invisible in a place like this was not a failure. It was a skill. She lived in a small apartment in Queens with her mother, who had been sick for several years now. Every Thursday, Mei Ling paid the rent first. Everything else came after. There was never much left, but there was always enough. She was good at making things stretch. What nobody at that restaurant knew, not the manager, not the other staff, not a single one of the wealthy guests who clicked their fingers to get her attention, was that Mei Ling had once been one of the most promising young pianists in New York City. She had started playing at 5 years old on a second-hand keyboard her father brought home from a church sale. By 10, her teacher was telling her parents she had something rare. By 14, she had earned a full scholarship to Juilliard's pre-college program. She practiced 4 hours every day without being asked. Music was not something she did. It was something she was. But at 19, her mother's health got worse, and the medical bills started piling up. Her father had passed away the year before. There was no one else. So Mei Ling made a quiet decision, the kind that does not come with drama or tears, just a slow, steady closing of one door. She left Juilliard. She found work. She did not look back. That was 8 years ago. She still played sometimes, late at night, on a small electric keyboard she kept under her bed. She played with headphones on so she would not wake her mother. No one ever heard her. That was the point. On a cold Thursday in November, the restaurant was full. A private dinner had been booked for a large group, 12 people, a corner of the room to themselves, the kind of booking that made the manager nervous in a good way. The man who had booked it was a well-known businessman. He was the sort of person who expected everything to be perfect and let you know, very clearly, when it was not. Mei Ling had dealt with tables like this before. She kept her movements efficient. She did not hover. She did not disappear either. She read the table the way a musician reads a room, quietly, constantly, adjusting. There was a grand piano near the back of the restaurant. It sat in a small alcove, polished and beautiful, mostly for decoration. The restaurant's regular pianist had fallen ill a few weeks earlier, and no replacement had been found yet. The piano had been quiet ever since. Mei Ling walked past it several times a night. Sometimes, without thinking, she would let her fingertips brush the side of it as she passed. Just a touch. Like saying hello to someone you used to know. One of the women working the host station noticed this. Her name was Priya. She was in her 40s, quiet and observant in the way that people who have worked in hospitality for a long time tend to be. She had noticed the way Mei Ling touched that piano for months. She had never said anything, but she had been watching. About halfway through the evening, one of the men at the private table, a heavy-set man with a very loud laugh, looked around the room and announced that the place needed music. He said it the way rich people sometimes say things, not as a request, but as a verdict. The businessman who had booked the table called over the manager and asked about the piano. The manager explained that the pianist was unwell. The businessman looked at the piano. Then he looked around the room, at the staff moving quietly between tables, and said, with a little smile, that surely someone among the staff could play. He said it like a joke, like the idea of it was funny. A few people at his table laughed. Mei Ling was standing near the service station when Priya appeared at her side. Priya did not ask her. She did not say, "Would you like to play?" She simply said, very quietly, "I know you can play that piano. I have seen the way you look at it. You don't have to say yes, but I think you should." Mei Ling shook her head. She said she was working. Priya looked at her for a moment. Then she said, You have been hiding it for 8 years. You don't owe anyone that. Mei Ling stood very still. She looked at the piano across the room. She thought about her keyboard under her bed, and the headphones, and all the nights she had played to no one. She untied her apron. She folded it carefully and set it on the service counter. Then she walked across the restaurant toward the piano. Her footsteps were quiet on the marble floor. A few staff members glanced up. No one at the private table noticed yet. She sat down on the bench. She adjusted it slightly, the same small adjustment she had made 10,000 times before. She placed her hands on the keys. Someone at the private table said something, and there was a short burst of laughter. Then it stopped. Because Mei Ling had started to play. She did not start with something simple or safe. She opened with the first movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, but she did not play it the way a student plays it, carefully and correctly. She played it the way someone plays something they have lived inside for years. Every note was unhurried. Every pause meant something. The first person to go quiet was the loud man who had asked for music. His fork stopped moving. He looked up. Then the woman beside him stopped talking mid-sentence. Then the whole table. Then, slowly, the rest of the restaurant. A couple near the window who had been arguing in low voices stopped. A man at the bar put his phone face down on the counter. A young waiter who was carrying a tray of glasses stood in the middle of the room and simply did not move. Mei Ling played through the first movement and did not stop. She moved into something else, something none of them recognized. It was quieter, slower, and in some way harder to listen to. Not because it was difficult, but because it felt personal. It had the shape of something that had been carried for a long time. This was a piece she had written herself when she was 17 years old. She had written it the week after her mother was first diagnosed. She had never played it for anyone. She had never planned to. But tonight, without really deciding to, she played it. The restaurant was completely still. One of the women at the private table, a composed, well-dressed woman who had not shown much emotion all evening, pressed her fingers to her mouth. Her eyes were wet. The businessman who had made the joke about the staff sat with his hands flat on the table. He was watching Mei Ling the way you watch something you did not expect to matter to you, and then it does. Mei Ling played for about 20 minutes in total. When the last note faded, she let it go slowly, the way you let go of a breath you have been holding. She sat with her hands in her lap for a moment. The room was quiet. Then Priya started clapping. Just Priya, from across the room. And then everyone. The businessman was the first one to stand up. He walked over to the piano. He did not say anything clever or rehearsed. He just looked at her and asked her name. She told him, Mei Ling. He asked how long she had played. She said since she was 5. He asked where she had studied. She said Juilliard, briefly. He asked why she had stopped. She paused for a moment, and then she told him the short version of the truth. Her mother had been ill. She had needed to work. That was all. He was quiet after that. Not the polite quiet of someone waiting for their turn to talk. The real quiet of someone thinking. Then he asked her one question. He said, "What would you need to go back to music?" Nobody had ever asked her that before, not in 8 years. She did not have the answer ready, because she had never let herself think about it seriously. But standing there, with the warmth of the piano still behind her, and the question sitting plainly in front of her, she said what was true. She said she would need time. She would need support for her mother's care. She would need someone to believe she had not fallen too far behind. He nodded. He said he would make some calls. He did. 3 weeks later, Mei Ling received an email about a fellowship program for musicians who had left formal training and wanted to return. It was run by a small arts foundation. It covered a living allowance and included resources for family care. She had never heard of it before. When she looked it up, she found that it had existed for years, funded quietly by a few private donors. She almost did not apply. She sat with the application open on her laptop for 2 days, reading it over and over. She was 27. Some of the candidates would be much younger. 8 years was a long time to be away. But she had played that night, in front of strangers, without preparation, without a plan, and the music had still been there, exactly where she had left it. She applied. For the audition, she played her own piece, The one she had written at 17. The one no one had ever heard before that night in the restaurant. She played it the same way she had played it then, not trying to impress anyone, just telling the truth through her hands. She was accepted. She gave her notice at the restaurant. Her last shift was on a Thursday. Priya hugged her at the end of the night and did not say much, which felt right. Some things do not need many words. The piano in the alcove has a new player now. He is young and talented and plays well. The guests enjoy it. But some of the staff, the ones who were there that November night, still slow down when they pass that piano. They do not always know why. It is just a feeling, the way some places hold a moment longer than they should. They are thinking about a woman who carried something extraordinary inside her for 8 years, through hard shifts and harder nights, through the kind of quiet sacrifice that most people never see. They are thinking about what it looked like when she finally stopped hiding it. It looked like 20 minutes of complete silence in a room full of people who thought they had seen everything. It looked like music,